Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Today I'm going to be tackling a very nice question that a viewer asked me the other day, and this is whether a unit is better if it's cheaper or if it's more powerful. Well, it turns out this is a very nuanced question, and I'm going to go ahead and try to answer it in this video as well by taking a look at a few examples and then coming to some logical conclusions. If you're confused about the scenario, basically the idea is that some civilizations get a bonus to certain units by having a direct discount, making the unit cheaper to mass, and another civilization will get a similar bonus to the same unit class, but it's just going to give it a stronger version of that unit, but they have to pay the regular price, which is going to be of course more expensive. So just to give you my first example, it's going to be Mayans versus Ethiopians, where Mayans have the cheaper unit, but Ethiopians have the more powerful unit when looking at their archer line. In this case, no technologies are needed because they both have the same blacksmith upgrades and they don't get a unique tech for that specific unit class. However, there are examples like the Huns CA versus Magyars CA, where Huns have the discount, but Magyars have the better unit only in Imperial Age when they get the extra technologies from the blacksmith and the unique tech that buffs the Magyar cav archers. It's a very interesting question. Let's hop into some examples and analyze to see what actually is the better bonus overall. Starting off with that same example I mentioned earlier, the Mayans versus Ethiopians. In my opinion, and from a lot of testing as well with these two civilizations, I see some massive cons to the Ethiopian bonus, but I see mostly pros for the Mayan bonus. So hear me out. For Mayans, because we're getting that discount, although it's staggering from Feudal Age onto Imperial Age, I feel like it's really easy to transition off the archers, because from making archers, we're directly getting a nice eco saving or resource saving that we can use to anything we want. It's a very flexible bonus and allows us to field a very powerful unit in the early game and then adapt off of it with a little bit of a bonus or a little bit more resources. So to give you an example, if we start opening archers with Mayans, we can easily put pressure on our opponent, and then when he makes skirmishers to counter our archers, we don't necessarily need to continue making archers. We can easily switch off to another unit that can complement the archers because we're actually saving resources, and those resources can be used towards that tech switch. Similarly, we can easily use those resources saved to get a faster castlage time. So at any point, if we start making archers, we have the discount from before, so the resources saved, and now we have the resources that we still have, coming in because we're not spending them on more archers to then go up to the next age and gain a tech advantage. If we compare that same situation in the early game with Ethiopians are only benefiting from their bonus when their archers are fighting. They don't benefit when making the archers, and they don't benefit, or their bonus doesn't allow them to be more flexible and transition into another unit. Now, of course, in a head-on-head fight, Ethiopians will win one-on-one versus a Mayan archer. However, the problem is Mayans in the early game will also be able to field more units because they get that discount. And so from this comparison, I can clearly conclude that the Mayan bonus is simply the better and more flexible bonus. If Ethiopians are hit with skirmishers, they just simply have a slightly stronger unit, but they're still getting hard countered. They can't make a transition as easy as Mayans can because they're not getting the extra resources that they're saving from the cheaper units. You could make the argument that the Ethiopian unit will be more powerful once population becomes a limiting factor. So if both of these civilizations are going up against each other and they're at 200 pop each, well, of course Ethiopians will have the more powerful unit and Mayans won't be able to field as many units as earlier. They can't overwhelm because they're stuck at 200 population. Maybe in early game we can have an extra 5 archers at the Mayans over the Ethiopians. In this case, once it's at 200 population, both civilizations will be able to field the same number of units. However, the problem is after the first fight takes place, even if Ethiopians wins that first fight quite clearly, the Mayans will be able to replenish their numbers a lot more effectively because they have that massive 30% discount in Imperial Age. So for this bonus, I would give it clearly to the Mayans. Their bonus is simply superior and it stays more flexible in the early game and even more powerful in the late game if you use it properly. Ethiopians, although they have a more powerful unit, don't remain as flexible and still die to the regular archer counters. Let's take a look at another example now when comparing Goth champion versus Japanese champion. It reminds me a little bit of the above scenario because in this case it's no unique tech, it's no extra upgrades. In fact, Goth are actually missing a blacksmith upgrade on their champions, but for the most part they have otherwise fully upgraded champions, and Japanese have fully upgraded champions, but they have their infantry attacking slightly faster or much faster than the Goth infantry or than the generic infantry. So in this scenario it's quite similar. Goth will be able to overwhelm in the early game because their barracks work faster, and they also get that unique tech to make their barracks work even faster, and so the champions will be able to overwhelm quite early on and quite fast as well because the Japanese don't get any such bonuses. So Goths, with combination with their cheaper infantry units and faster producing infantry units, will be able to field number advantages very, very quickly. Japanese, on the other hand, although they have the stronger unit head-on-head, so 1-on-1 or even 10-on-10, they won't be able to keep up with the Goth champions. You can also make the same argument. Come 200 pop when both players have a very similar number of units. Well, Goth champion after the first fight can easily replenish and make the same army over and over again, whereas Japanese will have a harder time doing that because they have to pay regular price or the discounted price after supplies comes in. Overall, it strikes me once again that the Goth bonus is stronger at all points of the game. However, as we get later and later on into the game, Japanese bonus does get more value because when population becomes a limiting factor, you're at least able to take better trades or good fights, but just replenishing the army is going to be the tough part. If it comes to the point where it's about snowballing and it's not about having resources to replenish, then obviously Japanese will be stronger because you can overwhelm and just end the game. But oftentimes you're able to have like 20 barracks spamming Goth champion and they just come out almost instantly to prevent the Japanese from actually pushing you. So in this case, I'd once again have to give the favor to the Goth champion, and I would say that it's even more lopsided in early Imperial Age when the Japanese champion doesn't have the same numbers as the Goth champion, and so Goth can typically just overwhelm in this case. Alright, I have a couple more examples here, but these are a little bit different. Let's compare Huns Cavalry versus Magyar Cavalry for a second, and we can see that Huns get the discount in Castle Age and Imperial Age, 10%, 20%, and Magyars get no such bonus in early game. However, they do have an extra blacksmith upgrade, the armor on their Cavalry, and they get the unique tech that gives them an extra damage and an extra range. Now in this case, Huns Cavalry are clearly better in Castle Age, there's no question about it. However, the Magyar Cavalry, when fully upgraded, is actually the much stronger unit because 1 range and 1 damage is actually massive on a cavalry unit. That being said though, we have the similar scenario where Huns can easily replenish their units, or more easily replenish their units, because they're going to be cheaper in the Imperial Age. You can also mass more in the early game, so Castle Age onto Imperial Age, and so Huns are the clear favorites in the early game. However, once you do get the 200 pop, in this case, I would have to give the bonus, or the better bonus, to the Magyars because their unit is just that much stronger that I don't really necessarily care about the Huns discount. So in this case, we see that the cheaper bonus is much stronger in the early game and even in the early imp, but then come late game, come to 200 population, the more powerful unit is going to be the better unit, and Magyar Cavalry will take it. Very similarly, we have Byzantine Camel versus Hindustani Camel. I've tested this matchup quite a bit, and Byzantine Camel in the early game is actually much better because you can feel just so many of it because the discount is ridiculous. But Hindustani Camel, because Byzantine is lacking bloodline and because Hindustani get civilization bonus, which makes their camels attack faster, and Imperial Camel and Imperial Age, so unique tech, making their camels absolutely insane in the late game, it's very similar to the Huns versus Magyar situation, whereas Byzantine is better in the Castle Age or better in the early Castle Age, but then come late Castle Age and come Imperial Age, Hindustani Camel is going to be much stronger. So in conclusion, I would say that having the cheaper unit or the discount on a unit class is going to be the better bonus in general. It's more flexible, allows you to save resources and use them for whatever you want to go for, and it also lets you get a numbers advantage over the more powerful unit in the early game, which allows you to overwhelm them and take better trades. However, come late game, in some cases, having the more powerful unit will be better because you're allowed to take much better trades and force the cheaper unit to have to constantly reinforce to be able to even fight you, and force them to have, less villagers to be able to sustain their cheaper units or get more of that cheaper unit on the field just to kind of combat your more powerful unit. And so in this case, come late game, having the more powerful one is going to be the advantage in some cases. However, this is not always true because as we can see with Goth champion and with Mayan Arbalest, sometimes they're just that much cheaper that it becomes viable for them to continue sustaining and reinforcing, and so they are able to actually manage even in the late game versus a more powerful unit. Let me know what you guys think about this discussion. It's not very factual. This is more or less my opinion and my testing that led me to these conclusions, but do let me know if I made any mistakes or if you feel differently about it, and let me know if you have any other scenarios that I missed and didn't cover in this video. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.